Hello, I'm back. It's going to be another album ranking video. Today we're doing U2. I'm Foxy Cellars, and this is my channel dedicated to storytelling in multiple artistic mediums. If you would, please go ahead, click the like, click the subscribe, comment even, especially if you're one of those people that fancies fables, tall tales, and high adventure. Today we're going to be covering music, and of course, this is U2. Okay, so here's the rules of the road. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I take every single album and I go through each song. In each song, I give a 1 to 5 star rating, and then I take the average for each album, and whichever album had the highest average of 1 to 5 stars, and whichever had the lowest would be the worst. That's how we do it. There are some tiebreakers in the cases. That's not going to be a problem with U2. The tiebreakers being whichever one had the most fives, and if it comes down to it, it's never come down to it. But if the number of fives isn't relevant, then it's bang for the buck. That usually benefits the albums that have the most songs on it. Okay, so with U2, unlike some of the other bands that I've covered, with the exception of Zeppelin, they're made up of all of the original core members through and through all the way. So you've got Bono, you've got The Edge on guitar, you've got Adam Clayton on the bass, and then you've got Larry Mullen Jr. on drums. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all four of those have pretty much recorded every single one of their albums and done most of their tours. Now, U2 initially started kind of like as they're an Irish rock band, but they started kind of like as a Christian rock band sound that they had. Most of the themes, especially in their lyrics, was related to their religion in Ireland. And then over time, that kind of dissipated, so to speak. But that's initially the core sound that they had. They stayed rock, but they have their own unique sound, but they're an Irish rock band. So unfortunately, with this one, we got to start out with the worst album. Their worst album is, I believe, their second album, which was October. And I wasn't that familiar with October. As I go through these, I had to go back and listen to each one of the albums, each one of the songs. And this was a dud. Like there's really nothing redeeming to me. You guys might have differing opinions on this, but I'm sure there's some people out there that are like, you kidding me? October is one of the best albums. Not for me.
October had an average song score of 2.3. And the 1.5 that it had was Gloria. It's a great song, so, it had a bang for your buck of only 28, which was the lowest of all of them. Number 13, All That You Can't Leave Behind. I remember when this one came out, and I tried my darndest to give it a shot. I was a huge fan of Pop, which came out 3 years earlier. So my expectation was, oh, this is going to be just as good. And there really wasn't anything on it that did anything for me. They did intentionally try to reconnect with their core original sound, from the 80s or 90s. All That You Can't Leave Behind has an average score of 2.5. It has no fives. And it has a bang for your buck of 29, which is just 1 point north of October. Number 12 is No Line on the Horizon. No Line on the Horizon came out 5 years after How to Dismantle the Atomic Bomb. I was a big fan of the Atomic Bomb album, and so my expectations were high, of course, on this. But there's not that much exciting to it. There were a lot of production delays when creating this album. It was experimentational, which this led to they tried to layer it, and it's an ambitious album, but it just, hey, I don't know, maybe there's people out there that love this album. It has an average song score of 2.6, has no fives on it, and it has a bang for your buck of 30, and so we're just inching up like one digit bang for your buck for each one of these from, the 14th to the 13th to 12th. So number 11 is The Unforgettable Fire. The Unforgettable Fire came out in 1942 and is their fourth album. It does have a couple of good songs on it. It has Pride, In the Name of Love, and it has Bad, which is kind of one of those underrated songs of theirs. From what I understood, is this album title was inspired by an exhibition of Japanese art that depicted the aftermath of the atomic bomb. Atomic bomb war politics being a lot of times part of the theme of lyrics and the albums and whatnot. You know, Bono was very heavily involved in being a voice for all of these types of items. And it was kind of it did have, like, if you listen to all their albums, this one, it has like a seed to what they became in the late 80s and early 90s. Of course, The Unforgettable Fire had an average song score of 2.89. It had 2 5s on it, which we mentioned earlier. And it had a total bang for your buck of 24. Number 10 is Rattle and Hum. Rattle and Hum, a very significant album at the time. You know, it's coming off of Joshua Tree. They're a monster band at this point. And they went, I almost said back to like a blues sound, but they never really had a blues sound. They were indulging in blues, and it was part of their influence, the progressional influence that they went through. Now, I remember it was like on HBO all the time. I remember the Rattle and Hum movie it's really just a concert with, you know, all of these songs in it. They didn't strike a chord with me. I remember I liked some of them. They were very catchy. They were on the radio all the time, most of these songs. And some of them have a great feel, and it didn't resonate with me. And now time has gone by. I've had the chance to go back and listen to this, and it's not doing much for me. I don't hate it. It's just not, it's not one of the U2 albums I'm going to put in. It's definitely got, not only does it have blues, though, it also has like a gospel, a little bit of folk to it, but I'd say more gospel than anything. Rattle and Hum had an average song score of 2.91. It does have 2 5s on it, and it's got a total bang for your buck of 31, so inching up just a little bit further. I do count Desire as a 5. It's a beautifully written song. Fantastic. So When Love Comes to Town, it includes B.B. King in it. I mean, literally, like the track is got B.B. King's, him in it. He was incorporated into the creation of the album. Not to mention Bob Dylan was also involved. And it is one of those songs where I give it a lot of credit, even though it's not like, it's not one of my favorites, but whatever. It's an exceptional song nonetheless. Number 9 is Boy. Boy is their debut album. Came out in October 20, 1980. And it was recorded in Dublin. And it does, like, Boy has the reason why it's titled Boy is that, it has these themes of innocence and adolescence and all the things you may have lost, growing up when looking back on your childhood. One of the interesting things about this was that there was some controversy over the young boy that was photographed for the cover of this album. I believe there was, I don't know if there was a lawsuit, but there was something like, that's something you could probably look up. I don't have the wherewithal knowledge to know what happened there, but I know there was controversy regarding that. Now, do understand this being their first album. This is really the beginning evolution to everything that went on for them in the early 80s. And so, right out of the gate, their music, the sound, I should say, was this blend of punk and rock and new wave. And everything that you'll hear in those first few albums is almost gone by the time you get to Joshua Tree and especially Rattle and Hum. They had evolved that sound, which is, they're going to do that every 5 to 6 years. Their sound evolved again and again and again. I mean, they're almost like the Beatles on steroids. If you look at like that 10 years of the Beatles where like they became this and they were this and they were this. U2 did that. And U2 was able to do that in a way where they looked like they sounded like they were learning leaps and bounds musically over any other band. Boy had a average song score of 3.09. It had 2 5s on it, and it had a bang for your buck of 34. Now, the 2 5s were the starting track, which was I Will Follow, and then Out of Control. It has 1 4 on it, but what really brought this album down was it's just filled with 3s and 2s and maybe a 1 or 2 in there somewhere. So number 8 is Songs of Experience. And Songs of Experience is the second album of the Songs of list. There was 3 of them. One of them's kind of some reimagined songs of theirs, their original songs and some live tracks. So like I don't count that one. It was kind of like a little experimental box set. So I'm only going to count Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. 8th on our list is Songs of Experience. Came out in 2017, and here's the thing. This one actually doesn't have any 5s on it. It's ranked where it is because it's got a lot of 4s and, a lot of 3s across the board, but, enough 4s to make this as a whole album cohesive. Songs of Experience has an average song score of 3.17, no 5s, like I said, and it's got a bang for your buck of 37. Now, number 7 is the album that came out right before it, a few years before it, Songs of Innocence. Kind of the same story. It's ranked where it is for the same reason. The only difference is this one does have 1 5. And if you're familiar with this album, Volcano, it's the best song on the album. Songs of Innocence had an average song score of 3.7. It had the 1 5, of course, Volcano, and then it had a bang for your buck of 41. Number 6 is How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Technically was tied with Songs of Innocence. However, it had multiple 5s on it. So there's your first tiebreaker here. I remember when this album came out, they hadn't had anything. The album before that was, All That You Can't Leave Behind, which was, as I said earlier, not one of my favorite albums. So I had lost faith in U2 being able to produce great music. I thought they were like kind of done. This came out and it has so many great songs on it. I mean, it's got some duds too, but it's like I listened to this album over and over and over again. This is really the first on this list so far where I'm going to be very enthusiastic about it. It was recorded in multiple places in Dublin, and then also was recorded in the south of France. I don't know the story behind why they recorded it in different places, but hey, there you have it. Now, this one, I think the reason why it resonated with myself was that it combines those rock anthems that they had before, a little cleaner now, but then like they have these emotional ballads. They also have like this still really great guitar work and driving rhythms that go throughout it. So, it's powerful. It's evocative. It's a sound that kind of like, listeners really gravitated towards because of its power. Now, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb had an average song score of 3.70. Like I said before, right along with Songs of Innocence. It's got those 4 5s in it. That's really like it almost should bring it up above, whatever number 5 is coming up. So it had a bang for your buck of 42. So its top songs are, Vertigo. Everybody's familiar with Vertigo. That's their first track. And then Miracle Drug. City of Blinding Lights was really this poetic ballad that, I mean, even in the title of the name, the song has that feel as if you're coming up over the horizon into a big city with these giant lights, and you just have this euphoric feeling. The whole song sounds just like that. And then a man and a woman, that sounds kind of like a lame name for a song, but the song's a beautiful song. So, hey, and it's littered with plenty of 4s and 3s. I go back. This is a great album. A lot of the songs from this album I have in my rotation of U2 songs that I listen to regularly. Number 5 is Zooropa. Zooropa came out in 1993, and here's the thing about Zooropa. Zooropa, I mean, they didn't even plan for this to be an album. This was supposed to be an EP, and then because of they were writing it on tour. So as they were developing songs for it, their creativity was through the roof, and they just kept creating more and more songs. So it turned into a full-fledged album. Now, overall, and I think this is what hurt its popularity, but the cohesiveness of it is fleeting in that, like, it has influences of like electronical and industrial, and like it has pop elements to it, which is what led to their next album, Pop, of course. But for me, I feel like this album is way underrated, and I love how many of the songs are completely different balls of wax. They're not even similar in a certain way. And I'm going to go into this for a moment, but my favorite U2 song is Lemon. Not traditionally popular as far as their catalog of songs, but this blows my mind. And it's one of those songs that goes on multiple tangents and has different, it goes in different places. Now, let's just start with Bono, for example. Bono in this song, and by the time Unforgettable Fire came out, his prowess as a singer, he was firing on all cylinders by that point. But this song, it's just the next level up in a falsetto. He sounds fantastic in it, and it goes on, like, it has beginning type of rave sounds to it, but like that also like the electronic sound to it, and then it goes on these like ballad parts of it that are just truly beautiful. Not only do I rank Lemon as the best U2 song in my eyes, but it's in my top 10 greatest songs by any band for that matter. So there you go. I mean, it gives you an understanding of my enthusiasm for just one segment of this album. Couple of the other songs that I will point out. I mean, Zooropa, even though it takes a moment to kind of develop, it's almost a 7-minute song, and it's got 2 minutes of setup, but great song once it gets going. Stay, The Wanderer, which has Johnny Cash's voice involved. That's another thing too. Like, I don't think people realize how often they collaborated with other musicians of all walks of life. And The Wanderer is primarily a Johnny Cash sounding song. So Zooropa has an average song score of 3.78. It has 3 5s on it, and that's why it fell 5th. It would have been higher for me had it had more 5s. The rest of it, I mean, it's all 4s, so it's high up enough because of all the average that is applied here. The total bang for the buck is 39. Number 4 is a lot of people's favorite album, Achtung Baby. Achtung Baby, they did that as their theme when they were at Las Vegas at the Sphere. I went and saw that show. Probably one of the great, I put it in the top 3 greatest concerts I've ever been to. The experience was mind blowing. And as much as the Sphere was amazing and such a fantastic venue to see anything, U2 contributed to most of the excellence of that show. Achtung Baby came out in 1991. I don't think I had heard it until, I went to college in 92, 93, and I remember listening to this album then. So for whatever reason, it didn't catch on with me for a year after it came out. It was probably their biggest diversion from sound that they had. Because bear in mind, this came after Rattle and Hum, gospel blues sounding album, and boom, out of nowhere, they're doing kind of like that disco electronic rave sound to, but still with that hard rock theme to it. Bear in mind, from my understanding, is the album was influenced by the Berlin Wall being torn down, reflecting a sense of like celebration, but also with change. So, maybe they came up with that after the fact, or they were influenced. I don't know, but there you have it. The band faced challenges during redefining their sound because people probably weren't. They probably didn't embrace it right away. I know, just like I mentioned before, I didn't pick up on the album until it had been out for a little while. So keep in mind, this was a time like grunge was a thing, and then there was like grunge and alternative rock. I kind of keep slightly different, even though they're in the same family. Like, they were embracing alternative rock with this electronic sound to it. Again, they have like the layers of guitar that they work through this, which sound. And here's the thing: like, I remember seeing them and watching Edge play the guitar, and I can't think of another guitarist that sounds like him. Achtung Baby has an average song score of 3.82. It's got 3 5s on it, and it has a bang for your buck of 47. The song One, which is the 5th track. Hey, you know what? They should have put that as number 1, but yeah. Missed opportunity, damn it. That song has always been one of those kind of perfectly written songs. It's beautiful, whatnot. And keep in mind, too, as much as I did listen to Achtung Baby as a kid, I didn't really embrace it until this tour came around in 2023. So it reemerged in my life as an excellent piece of art. Number 3 is Pop. Pop, I mean, if I were to guess without doing all this mathematical nonsense, I would have said Pop is my favorite. I still say Pop is my favorite, even though it's falling number 3 on here. I mean, it's got 5s across the board, and it had a couple of 3s that must have brought it down. But this has some wildly awesome stuff. And keep in mind, too, so like by the time Pop came out, they had done Achtung Baby, they did Zooropa after that, and then they did Pop. Everyone has now embraced this new sound. So this is the 3rd album of that new sound. I mean, the first song on it is Discotheque. It's a 5. Discotheque is like, it is exactly as it sounds. It sounds like the best badass disco with a hard rock theme thread to it, but also being just like a fantastically written song. So, If God Will Send His Angels that brings it down a second as far as like its pace, and it's such a great song. Staring at the Sun, Last Night on Earth, just boom, boom, boom. You got 3 5s, and that's after it started with 2 5s and then a 4, and then it's got 3 5s again. Like, who makes albums like that? I mean, this is where we're getting into like the nitty gritty of why they're so awesome. And then if you wear that velvet dress, which is also similar in its pace to If God Will Send His Angels, is great. It's a little more funky, a little bit sexier as far as songs go, but it fits. And that's the thing too. Like, I want to say, as much as Zooropa before it was disjointed, this one is way more cohesive, and it's grounded in the fact that, like, okay, now we have a sound and we want to stick to a theme, and they're close. So like, it goes up and down a little bit, but it all feels like it all belongs on the same album, versus Zooropa was kind of all over the place. Pop had an average song score of 3.91, and it has 6 5s on it. I mean, think of it this: any band with 6 5s on it is on an album that's top notch. Total bang for the buck was 48. So we're kind of getting up. We're like 20 points higher than we were when we started this list. Number 2, a lot of people's favorite album also. All the top 3, I'm going to say that for all 3 of them. This could be someone's favorite album. Hey, Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree was the iconic album that really put them on the map. I mean, they were a known band before that. Joshua Tree came out and bam, they were a monster band. And this was in the highlight of MTV videos, so they were producing really great videos. And you know what? They had that one video, I think it was Where the Streets Have No Name, and they kind of copied that Abbey Road album that the Beatles had done, where they were on top of the rooftop and people are showing up. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers did it later. I'm sure 40 other bands did it too, but like, those are the ones that kind of stick out as the monster bands that did it. And it didn't feel like they were stealing it from them. It just felt like, hey, it's such an easy, smooth thing to do, and encapsulates us as a band. And here we're doing this live. It just seems appropriate. So this one probably was the first time that they embraced more of like an American theme. You know, they were British slash Irish. I mean, they were Irish rock initially, but then they kind of had more of a embracing of what their contemporaries were doing in Britain. And then this one was more mainstream American rock, had spirituality to it. It had like, it dealt with some social issues, but it was, it had love themes it was recorded in California in the desert, thus Joshua Tree. If you know where Joshua Tree is located, you know what the hell I'm talking about. And so the band recorded their album there, and the name was inspired by the landscape out in Joshua Tree. I think it was their first Grammy. So I believe this is where they won their first Grammy, the album of the year they won. And, like their songwriting is really the thing that stands out the most. I mean, as musicians, they matured. Unforgettable Fire is the album that came out right before it. It's got some good stuff on it. It's got some good songs on it, I should say. And to go from that to this, where it's just diamonds all along almost every single track, and then have the maturity that they have in their songwriting, it was amazing. It was really like, hey, it takes you 5 albums to become super, super amazing songwriters. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, it does show you how hard it is to become this great. And that's where they were by 1987. This is 7 years after their first album was released. And it does incorporate, it's a little more folk, and it started to touch on that blues feel that they had. But I mean, as much as like the guitar rhythms that they had and the bass that they had in it, this really does showcase Bono's like soaring, I should say, anthemic like melodies in his vocals. That was just, it's classic. It's a classic, hard folk rock. It really is, and it's. I mean, I'll tell you this: you play 80% of the songs on this album, and everybody who has ever listened to music knows these songs. There's just song after song, With or Without You, Where the Streets Have No Name. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I think, is that the one where they're like going in and out of, it almost looked like Atlantic City or something, down the streets on the boardwalk and stuff, and looking for love, that kind of feel to it. Running to Standstill. Red Hill Mining Town was one that I always kind of gravitated towards. I always thought that was a great song. And, One Tree Hill. And the thing is, when I went and saw the Achtung Baby tour, at the Sphere in 2023, there's only so many songs on that album. So what they did is they chose a different segment in the middle to do, I think they did 4 or 5 songs from it. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But then at the end of it, there's like, here's all our highlights. And, I would say 60, 70% of those were from Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree had an average song score of 4.4. It had 8 5s on it. Like, that's crazy. 11 tracks, but hey, and a couple of those were 3s and 2s, but but the rest are, it's 8 5s, and, it's got a 4. It had a bang for your buck of 49. And our number one U2 album, unconsciously my favorite, based on the fact that, like, once I went through it, it was just all 5s and 1 3. So, like, that 3 didn't bring it down enough to spot it number 2. In retrospect, when I go back and listen to the album, I'm like, yep, okay, I get it. So here's the thing. I saw them as I mentioned before, I saw them at the Sphere, and they did the Achtung Baby tour. And then right in the middle of it, they take a break, and they're like, we pick a different album for each one of these. And tonight we're picking War. And then they explain that War, I don't think they said it was like their favorite album, but they said, like, it's one of our favorites. We go back all the time. There's so many great songs on it. And then they played some of their greatest songs off of it, of course. So clearly it stands out for them. And it is a significant turning point for them. So, like, they had some, this is their 3rd album. As I mentioned, the second one was their worst, and their first one, fell in the middle somewhere, not even. So by the time they hit this one, this is kind of where they're shifting towards what Unforgettable Fire sounded like, and then later, reminiscent of a little bit of the roots of Joshua Tree. So this one has a war theme based on the album being called War, of course, and they were really just standing on a platform discussing the conflict and the themes of social injustice and war. And when they promoted the album, I believe in the promotional advertisings and whatnot, they use kind of like a military band theme sound to it, with live performances from this album. And really what makes this album so great is it's still hardcore rock. And it has, those hard driving rhythms, but it also has that, anthemic choruses along with Edge's distinctive guitar sound and style and whatnot. So it's an amazing album. It really is. And it kind of slipped my mind when you look at all of, because they've got 14 albums. So, 15, 16, if you want to count some of the live albums or whatnot. But so this one should have stood out. I didn't realize it. It's got, lesser tracks than Joshua Tree, but it has an average song score of 4.8. That's 0.4 greater than Joshua Tree, which, some people consider one of the greatest albums of all times, which I've said over and over again. So it has 9 5s on it. That's just bananas. Like any album, I'm like, maybe if it was a triple album and it had 9 5s on it, that would still be an awesome album. But this is a single album with only 10 tracks on it, and it's got 9 5s. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And it's got a total bang for your buck of 48, which is just 1 point below Joshua Tree. But Joshua Tree has one more track, and that last track was, got a 2. So that just tells you what the rest of the album was in comparison, and how if there was only 10 tracks on Joshua Tree, it would have been 1 point lower than War. But, hey, like I said, like War, Joshua Tree, Pop, those three you can argue up and down, left and right, even Octoon Baby maybe. But hey, that rhymed. Didn't mean it. Anyway, that's my number one.
Okay, that my friends is the ranking of all of the U2 albums from worst to best. I was a little surprised at what number one was going to be, because I thought I knew what number one was going to be, but then when I did the math, it turns out it was War, which is, I forgot how great that album was, but it's a really great album. I'm Foxy Cellars. If you would, go ahead, click subscribe, get keyed into videos just like this. You'll get keyed in anytime I produce a new video. Click the like. Comment below if you have a difference of opinion, or if you want to, substantiate anything that I said already. I want to thank you again for watching. Be good.